My mom's fiancé wanted my $200,000 duplex and gave her an ultimatum, him or me. She chose him until police arrested him for stealing $15,000 from his auto shop customers. I, 17M, never thought I would be posting on Reddit, but here I am. I live with my mom Martha, 42F, and my little sister Jenna, 6F. Well, I used to live with them until 2 weeks ago. My parents divorced when I was 14. My dad Alfred, 45M, worked in construction and was always traveling for different projects. He would be gone for weeks at a time, sometimes months. My mom worked part-time at a local bank and took care of me and Jenna most of the time. The divorce happened because my dad got a job offer in Texas that would have required us to move. My mom refused to leave because her entire family lives here. Her parents, her 3 sisters, and all her cousins are within 30 minutes of our house. She grew up here and never wanted to leave. My dad took the job anyway and moved to Texas by himself. The divorce was not messy. My dad agreed to let us keep the house and he sends money every month for child support. He visits every other month when he can get time off work. Jenna barely remembers living with him because she was only 3 when he left. I was old enough to understand what was happening, but I never blamed either of my parents. They just wanted different things. After the divorce, my mom struggled with money even with the child support. The house is old and needs repairs all the time. The heating bill in winter is enormous. She picked up extra hours at the bank, but it was still tight. My maternal grandfather helped out sometimes, but he is retired and lives on a fixed income. About 8 months ago, my mom started dating a guy named Lance, 39M. She met him at the bank where she works. He came in to open a business account for his auto repair shop. My mom was the one who helped him with all the paperwork and they hit it off. Lance seemed nice enough at first. He would come over for dinner sometimes and bring flowers for my mom. He was polite to me and Jenna. He would ask about school and my plans after graduation. Jenna liked him because he would play games with her and bring her small toys. Lance owns his auto repair shop on the other side of town. He inherited it from his uncle who died 5 years ago. The shop does well because it is the only full-service garage in our area. People drive from neighboring towns to get their cars fixed there. Lance lives in a nice apartment above the shop. 3 months ago, Lance proposed to my mom. She said yes immediately. I was surprised because they had only been dating for 5 months, but my mom seemed really happy. She started planning a small wedding for this summer. Lance moved in with us right after the engagement. That is when things started to change. Lance began making comments about the house and how much money we were spending. He complained about the heating bill and said we should turn the thermostat down. He said Jenna and I left lights on too much and it was wasting electricity. He started buying cheaper groceries and told my mom we needed to cut back on expenses. Lance also started treating me differently. He would make jokes about me still living at home at 17 and ask when I was going to get a job. He said most kids my age were already working and contributing to the household. When I told him I was focusing on school to get into college, he laughed and said college was a waste of money. The biggest change was how Lance acted around Jenna. At first, he was sweet to her, but after moving in, he became impatient. He would tell her to be quiet when she was playing. He complained that her toys were always all over the living room. He said 6-year-olds in his day were better behaved and more respectful. My mom defended Lance every time I brought up his behavior. She said he was just trying to help us be more responsible with money. She said he was used to living alone and needed time to adjust to having kids around. She kept saying that Lance was good for our family because he provided stability. 2 months ago, my maternal grandmother died. She was 78 and had been sick for a while, so it was not unexpected. My grandmother owned a duplex in the better part of town. She rented out both sides and used the income to supplement her retirement. The duplex is worth about $200,000 according to the real estate websites. My grandmother left the duplex to me in her will. She said she wanted to make sure I had something to help me start my adult life. The will states that a lawyer will manage the property and collect the rent until I turn 21. Then everything transfers to me completely. My mom was surprised when the lawyer read the will. She knew her mother had property but did not know I was inheriting it. My mom's 3 sisters were also surprised, but they did not seem upset. They each inherited $10,000 and some jewelry. My mom inherited my grandmother's car and some furniture. Lance's reaction was different. He immediately started asking questions about the duplex and how much rent it brought in. He wanted to know who the current tenants were and when their leases were up. He asked if I planned to sell it or keep renting it out. He seemed very interested in every detail. The lawyer explained that the duplex currently brings in $1,800 per month in rent. After property taxes, insurance, and maintenance, the net income is about $1,200 per month. Lance kept asking questions about the finances and seemed to be calculating something in his head. That night, Lance and my mom had a long conversation in their bedroom. I could hear them talking but could not make out the words. The next morning, Lance was acting strange. He kept looking at me during breakfast and would start to say something then stop. A few days later, my mom sat me down for what she called a family meeting. Lance was there too. My mom said they had been talking about our future as a family. She said Lance had some concerns about me inheriting the duplex at such a young age. Lance jumped in and said he thought it would be better if the duplex was managed by adults who knew about real estate. He suggested that my mom should become the trustee instead of the lawyer. He said lawyers charge too much in fees and we could save money by keeping everything in the family. I told them the lawyer fees were already built into my grandmother's estate planning and I was comfortable with the arrangement. Lance persisted and said family should handle family business. He said he had experience with property management from dealing with his shop and could help my mom manage the duplex. My mom supported Lance and said she thought it made sense for her to be involved in such a big financial decision. She said she was worried I would make mistakes and lose money. She kept emphasizing that she only wanted what was best for me. I refused to change the arrangement. My grandmother specifically chose this lawyer and I wanted to respect her wishes. Lance became agitated and said I was being stubborn and ungrateful. He said my mom had sacrificed a lot raising me and deserved to have a say in decisions that affected the whole family. The conversation ended badly. Lance stormed out of the room and my mom followed him. I heard them arguing in their bedroom again that night. Over the next few weeks, Lance's behavior toward me got worse. He would make snide comments about me being spoiled and privileged. He said I did not appreciate what I had and needed to learn responsibility. He started assigning me chores around the house and would criticize everything I did. Lance also began talking about changes he wanted to make to the house. He said we should renovate the kitchen and add a deck in the backyard. When my mom said we could not afford those improvements, Lance would glance at me and make comments about how some people in the family had resources they were not sharing. Last month, Lance's true intentions became clear. My mom approached me with what she called a compromise. She said Lance had agreed to pay for my college tuition if I would sign over the duplex to them. Lance said he would manage the property and use the rental income to pay for my education and living expenses. Lance presented this as a generous offer. He said college was expensive and this way I would graduate without debt. He said the duplex was too much responsibility for someone my age and I should focus on my studies instead of worrying about tenants and maintenance issues. I saw right through this plan. Lance wanted control of the duplex and its income. He was offering to pay for college, but the duplex income over 4 years would be much more than college tuition. He would essentially be trading my inheritance for a fraction of its value. I told them absolutely not. Lance became angry and said I was making a huge mistake. He said college costs were skyrocketing and I would regret not taking his offer. My mom pleaded with me to reconsider and said Lance was only trying to help. That night, Lance and my mom had their loudest argument yet. I heard Lance yelling about ungrateful kids and wasted opportunities. My mom was trying to calm him down. The argument lasted for hours. The next morning, my mom told me Lance had given her an ultimatum. He said he could not marry someone whose child did not respect him or appreciate his help. He said I was causing problems in their relationship and something had to change. My mom was crying when she told me this. She said Lance was threatening to call off the engagement unless I agreed to his college proposal. She begged me to think about what was best for the whole family. She said Lance made her happy and she did not want to lose him. I could not believe my mom was asking me to give up my inheritance to keep her boyfriend happy. I told her Lance was manipulating both of us and she should see that. I said if Lance truly loved her, he would not be making these demands. My mom got defensive and said Lance had legitimate concerns about my maturity level. She said he was offering to invest in my future and I was being selfish by refusing. She said I did not understand how hard it was for her to find someone willing to take on a family with 2 kids. 3 days ago, my mom delivered Lance's final ultimatum. She said Lance would call off the engagement and move out unless I signed over the duplex within a week. She said Lance felt disrespected and could not build a life with someone whose child fought him on every decision. My mom was practically begging me to comply. She said she loved Lance and wanted to marry him. She said I would be leaving for college soon anyway and should think about her happiness for once. She said the duplex would just complicate my life and I would be better off without it. I realized my mom had chosen Lance over me. She was willing to pressure me into giving up my inheritance to keep her boyfriend happy. Lance had successfully driven a wedge between us and she could not see it. I called my dad that night. I told him everything that had happened since Lance moved in. My dad was quiet for a long time after I finished talking. Then he said I should come stay with him in Texas until things cooled down. My dad drove 18 hours straight to come get me. He arrived yesterday morning while my mom was at work and Lance was at a shop. I packed my clothes and important documents. I left a note saying I was going to stay with my dad and would not be changing my mind about the duplex. My mom has called me 15 times since she found the note. She left voicemail saying I was making a terrible mistake and ruining her chance at happiness. She said Lance was a good man who only wanted what was best for our family. She begged me to come home and talk things through. Lance also called and left a voicemail. He said I was acting like a spoiled child and my mom was heartbroken because of my selfishness. He said he was only trying to help me succeed in life and I was too immature to see it. I have not responded to any of their calls. I am staying with my dad in Texas and will probably finish my senior year here. My dad said I can live with him as long as I need to. He said he was proud of me for standing up for myself and not letting them bully me. The lawyer managing my inheritance confirmed that no one can force me to sign over the property. He said my grandmother's will was very specific and cannot be changed. He also said he deals with these situations often where family members try to pressure beneficiaries into giving up inheritances. I keep thinking about Jenna and how this affects her. She is only 6 and does not understand what is happening. My mom will probably tell her I abandoned the family. Lance will likely become her stepfather and she will grow up with his influence. I worry about what kind of person Lance really is and whether Jenna will be okay. My mom sent a text yesterday saying Lance had called off the engagement because of my actions. She said he could not marry into a family where he was not respected. She blamed me for destroying her happiness and said I would regret this decision for the rest of my life. I do not regret leaving. Lance showed his true colors and my mom chose to support him over her own son. I lost my mother's support but I protected my inheritance and my future. I just wish things could have been different. Update 1: A lot has happened since my original post. Thank you to everyone who supported me and confirmed I made the right decision. Some people asked for updates, so here is what has been going on. First, the situation with my mom got worse before it got better. After I left for Texas, she continued calling and texting daily. She alternated between begging me to come home and blaming me for ruining her life. She said Lance was the best thing that ever happened to our family and I destroyed it out of selfishness. Lance also continued contacting me. His messages became increasingly nasty. He called me ungrateful and said I would fail in life without his guidance. He said my dad was a deadbeat who abandoned his family and I would end up just like him. He threatened to contest my inheritance somehow, even though the lawyer already explained that was impossible. My dad finally told me to block both of their numbers. He said they were harassing me and I did not need to listen to their abuse. He was right. Once I blocked them, I could focus on adjusting to life in Texas. My dad lives in a small apartment near his construction site. It is not fancy but it is clean and quiet. He works long hours but he makes an effort to spend time with me in the evenings. We talk about school, my plans for college, and what happened back home. He listens without judging and gives good advice. I enrolled in the local high school to finish my senior year. It was difficult starting over in a new place, but the guidance counselor helped me get caught up. The teachers have been understanding about my situation. I am taking the same classes I had in Ohio, so I should graduate on schedule. My dad introduced me to some of his coworkers who have kids my age. They invited me to hang out and made me feel welcome. It is different from my old friends back home, but these kids are friendly and include me in their activities. I am adjusting better than I expected. The lawyer managing my inheritance has been checking in regularly. He said the duplex is performing well and both tenants are current on rent. He handles all the maintenance requests and property management tasks. He sends me monthly reports showing the income and expenses. Seeing those numbers reminds me why I made the right choice. 3 weeks after I left, my mom's sister Lisa called me. Lisa, 39F, is my mom's youngest sister and we always got along well. She said she needed to tell me something important about Lance that my mom did not know. Lisa works as a secretary at the courthouse in our county. Part of her job involves processing legal documents and court filings. She has access to public records for things like divorces, bankruptcies, and civil lawsuits. After Lance proposed to my mom, Lisa decided to do a background check on him. She said she always does this when family members start dating seriously because she wants to protect them. She looked up Lance's name in the court system to see if he had any legal problems. What Lisa found shocked her. Lance had been married before, not once but twice. Both marriages ended in messy divorces with his ex-wives accusing him of financial abuse. The court record showed Lance had tried to gain control of his ex-wives' assets during both marriages. Lance's first wife owned a small beauty salon when they married. During their divorce proceedings, she accused Lance of pressuring her to add his name to the business deed. When she refused, Lance became controlling and manipulative. He eventually cleaned out their joint bank account and disappeared for 2 weeks. The divorce was finalized with Lance getting nothing from the salon. Lance's second wife inherited a house from her grandmother, similar to my situation. According to the divorce documents, Lance convinced her to refinance the house and use the money to expand his auto repair business. When the marriage failed, the wife was left with a large mortgage payment and Lance kept the business improvements. She had to sell the house to pay off the debt Lance created. Lisa also discovered Lance had filed for bankruptcy 6 years ago. His auto repair shop was failing and he owed money to suppliers and creditors. The bankruptcy allowed him to keep the shop building but wiped out most of his other debts. This happened right around the time he inherited the business from his uncle. Lisa tried to warn my mom about these findings several months ago. She showed my mom the court documents and explained Lance's pattern of targeting women with assets. My mom refused to listen and accused Lisa of being jealous and trying to sabotage her relationship. My mom told Lance that Lisa had been researching his background. Lance became furious and demanded that my mom cut off contact with Lisa. He said Lisa was toxic and trying to poison my mom's mind against him. My mom chose Lance's side and stopped speaking to Lisa. Lisa called me because she was worried Lance might try to manipulate my mom into pressuring me further about the duplex. She said Lance's pattern was always the same. He would identify women with assets, charm them into relationships, then slowly gain control of their finances. When he got what he wanted or the women caught on, he would move on to the next target. Lisa also told me something else that explained Lance's sudden interest in me. Apparently, Lance had been asking my mom detailed questions about her family's finances from the very beginning. He knew about my grandmother's duplex before she died because my mom had mentioned it during one of their early dates. Lisa suspected Lance specifically targeted my mom because he knew about the potential inheritance. He had probably been planning to get control of the duplex all along. The engagement and moving in with us were just steps in his plan. This information made me sick. Lance had been manipulating my mom from the start. He did not love her or want to build a family with us. He saw us as a way to get his hands on valuable property. My mom had fallen for his act completely. I told my dad everything Lisa had shared. He was angry but not surprised. He said Lance's behavior reminded him of other scam artists he had encountered over the years. He said these people are skilled at finding vulnerable targets and exploiting their emotions. My dad suggested I call the lawyer managing my inheritance and tell him about Lance's history. The lawyer said he would make note of it in my file but assured me it did not change anything legally. He said Lance had no claim to the property no matter what he convinced my mom to believe. Lisa also told me she had tried calling my mom after Lance broke off the engagement. She wanted to provide emotional support and maybe share what she had learned about Lance's past. My mom would not take her calls and had apparently told other family members that Lisa was spreading lies about Lance. I decided to call my mom's oldest sister Janet, 44F. Janet and my mom are very close and talk almost daily. I thought maybe Janet could help my mom see the truth about Lance. Janet already knew about Lance's past. Lisa had told her months ago when she first discovered the court records. Janet had also tried to warn my mom but got the same reaction Lisa did. My mom accused Janet of being jealous and trying to ruin her happiness. Janet said my mom had been very depressed since Lance left. She was not eating properly and had been calling in sick to work. My mom blamed me for everything and refused to consider that Lance might have been using her. She kept saying Lance was a good man who only wanted what was best for our family. Janet also told me my mom had been talking about moving to Texas to be closer to me. She thought if she showed up and apologized, I might change my mind about the duplex. Janet was worried my mom might do something desperate to try to win Lance back. I told Janet about my mom's plan to move to Texas. Janet said she would try to talk my mom out of it. She said showing up unannounced would only make things worse and push me further away. She promised to keep checking on my mom and update me if anything changed. The conversation with Janet made me realize how completely Lance had isolated my mom from her support system. He had turned her against her sisters and convinced her that anyone questioning him was the enemy. My mom was now alone and still defending the man who had manipulated and abandoned her. I also learned more about what happened to Jenna after I left. My mom had told Jenna I went to live with my dad because I did not love our family anymore. Jenna apparently cried for days and kept asking when I was coming home. Janet said she had been trying to spend more time with Jenna to help her adjust. This information about Jenna made me the most upset. My mom was using a 6-year-old child to manipulate me emotionally. She was making Jenna believe I had abandoned them when the truth was that Lance had driven me away. Jenna did not deserve to be caught in the middle of this mess. I talked to my dad about maybe calling Jenna directly. He said it might be better to wait until things settled down more. He was worried my mom might use any contact with Jenna as a way to pressure me further. He said we needed to be strategic about how to maintain my relationship with Jenna without giving my mom ammunition. The whole situation has been exhausting. Learning about Lance's history explained everything but also made me angry at how thoroughly he had fooled my mom. She had chosen a con artist over her own son and was still defending him even after he abandoned her. I am glad I trusted my instincts and refused to give in to their pressure. If I had signed over the duplex, Lance would have taken it and probably left my mom anyway once he got what he wanted. At least now I still have my inheritance and my mom might eventually realize the truth about Lance. My dad says healing from this kind of family trauma takes time. He reminds me that I cannot control my mom's choices but I can control my own responses. I am focusing on finishing school and planning for college. The duplex will give me financial security that Lance tried to steal from me. Update: 2 more developments have happened and some of you were right about Lance having other motives. This update is going to be long but I think you will find it interesting. About 2 weeks after my first update, my mom finally contacted me through my Aunt Janet. She asked Janet to give me a message saying she was ready to apologize and wanted to have an honest conversation. She promised not to mention the duplex or Lance and just wanted to talk to her son. I was hesitant but my dad encouraged me to hear what she had to say. He said it might help me get closure even if it did not lead to reconciliation. We arranged for my mom to call me at a specific time when my dad would be home for support. The phone call started well enough. My mom apologized for choosing Lance over me and admitted she had made mistakes. She said she missed me terribly and regretted how everything had happened. She sounded genuinely remorseful and I started to think maybe we could work things out. But then my mom started talking about Lance again. She said he had contacted her a few days after their breakup and apologized for how he handled everything. According to her, Lance claimed he had been under a lot of stress with his business and had not been thinking clearly. He wanted to try again and work things out. My mom said Lance had realized he was wrong to pressure me about the duplex. He supposedly told her that he only wanted to help me succeed and had gone about it the wrong way. Lance allegedly said he would respect my decision about the inheritance if I would give him another chance to be a good stepfather. I could not believe my mom was falling for Lance's manipulation again. I told her Lance had a history of targeting women with assets and asked if she knew about his previous marriages. My mom got defensive and said people had been spreading rumors about Lance to turn her against him. When I mentioned the court records my Aunt Lisa had found, my mom claimed Lance had already explained everything. She said his ex-wives were bitter women who had tried to destroy him financially. She said Lance was the victim in both situations and had learned from those experiences. My mom then dropped a bombshell. She said Lance had proposed a new arrangement that would benefit everyone. Lance wanted to marry my mom and adopt both me and Jenna legally. In exchange, I would keep the duplex but Lance would help me manage it professionally. Lance claimed this would teach me responsibility while keeping the property in the family. I knew this was another manipulation tactic. Lance was offering to back down on the duplex to regain access to our family. Once he married my mom and gained legal standing as my stepfather, he would find other ways to pressure me. I told my mom absolutely not and that Lance could not be trusted. My mom started crying and said I was being unreasonable. She said Lance had made genuine efforts to change and I was not giving him a fair chance. She begged me to consider what was best for the whole family and think about Jenna, who missed having a father figure. The conversation ended badly with my mom hanging up when I refused to consider Lance's new proposal. I felt like I was back to square one with her still choosing Lance over me despite everything that had happened. My dad said he was proud of me for standing firm. He said Lance was clearly desperate to get back into our lives and was using my mom's emotions to manipulate the situation. He warned me that Lance would probably try other approaches if this one failed. My dad was right. 2 days later, Lance showed up at my high school in Texas. He had somehow figured out which school I was attending and waited for me in the parking lot after classes ended. When he saw me, he approached and said he needed to talk. I was shocked to see Lance in Texas and immediately felt unsafe. I told him to leave me alone and started walking toward the school building where there were other people around. Lance followed me and kept talking, saying he had driven all the way from Ohio to apologize and make things right. Lance said he understood why I was angry and that he had handled everything wrong. He claimed he really did love my mom and Jenna and wanted to be part of our family. He said the duplex did not matter to him anymore and he just wanted a chance to prove he could be a good stepfather. I told Lance I knew about his previous marriages and his pattern of targeting women with assets. Lance got angry and said people had been filling my head with lies about him. He said his ex-wives were vindictive and had spread false information to hurt his reputation. Lance then tried a different approach. He said my mom was heartbroken and barely functioning since I left. He claimed she was not eating or sleeping properly and had been missing work. He said Jenna was asking about me constantly and did not understand why her big brother had abandoned her. Lance said he would do anything to reunite our family, including signing legal documents promising never to interfere with my inheritance. He pulled out a handwritten note supposedly from Jenna asking me to come home. The note looked like a 6-year-old had written it, but something about it seemed fake. I told Lance to leave me alone and threatened to call the police if he did not stop following me. Lance became more aggressive and said I was being ridiculous. He said he had driven 18 hours to make peace and I owed him at least a conversation. At that point, other students and a teacher noticed what was happening. The teacher approached and asked if everything was okay. I explained that Lance was harassing me and I wanted him to leave. The teacher told Lance he needed to leave school property immediately or they would call security. Lance finally left, but not before saying this was not over. He said my mom deserved better than a son who would abandon his family over money. He claimed I would regret my selfishness when I was older and realized what I had thrown away. I called my dad immediately and told him what happened. My dad was furious and said Lance showing up at my school was completely inappropriate. He contacted the school administration and filed a report about the incident. The school said they would watch for Lance and call police if he returned. My dad also called the local police to report Lance's harassment. The police said since Lance had not threatened violence, they could not arrest him, but they would document the incident. They advised me to call 911 if Lance approached me again. That night, my mom called and was crying hysterically. She said Lance had told her about our encounter at school and she was devastated that I had threatened to call police on him. She said Lance was only trying to help and I had humiliated him by involving the school authorities. My mom begged me to give Lance another chance and said he truly loved our family. She claimed Lance was heartbroken that I saw him as a threat when he only wanted to make amends. She said Lance had spent his own money and time to drive to Texas to apologize and I had rejected his sincere efforts. I told my mom that Lance showing up at my school uninvited was stalking behavior and completely unacceptable. I said any man who truly cared about me would have respected my boundaries and stayed away. Lance's actions proved he was still trying to manipulate and control the situation. My mom got defensive and said Lance was just desperate to fix things because he loved us so much. She said I was being paranoid and overreacting to Lance's attempt to reconcile. She claimed Lance had driven to Texas as a grand romantic gesture to prove his commitment to our family. The conversation confirmed that my mom was completely under Lance's influence. She could not see his behavior objectively and was making excuses for actions that would be obvious red flags to anyone else. Lance had successfully convinced her that his stalking was actually evidence of his love for us. After my mom hung up, my dad and I had a long conversation about Lance's escalating behavior. My dad said Lance was becoming desperate because his usual manipulation tactics were not working. He warned me that desperate people sometimes do unpredictable things and I needed to be extra careful. My dad decided to take time off work and drive me to school for the next few days until we were sure Lance had left Texas. He also contacted my mom's sister Janet to let her know what Lance had done. Janet was horrified and said she would try to make my mom understand how inappropriate Lance's behavior had been. Janet called me the next day with disturbing news. She had tried to talk to my mom about Lance's trip to Texas, but my mom had defended Lance's actions. Even worse, my mom had apparently given Lance money for gas and hotel expenses for the trip. She had actively supported his decision to follow me to Texas. Janet also revealed that Lance had been staying at my mom's house since their supposed reconciliation. He had moved back in a few days before he drove to Texas. My mom had not mentioned this during our phone call, probably because she knew I would be upset. The news that Lance was living with my mom again made me worry about Jenna's safety. I asked Janet to keep checking on Jenna and watch for any signs that Lance might be mistreating her. Janet promised to visit more often and pay attention to how Lance interacted with Jenna. Janet told me something else that explained Lance's desperation. Apparently, Lance's auto repair shop was struggling financially again. Several customers had complained about poor work and overcharging. Lance had also been late paying his suppliers and some were demanding cash payments only. Janet suspected Lance was facing another financial crisis similar to his previous bankruptcy. This would explain why he was so determined to get access to my inheritance. The Duplex income could help him save his business and avoid losing everything again. This information confirmed that Lance had never cared about being part of our family. He was a con artist who targeted my mom specifically because he needed money to save his failing business. Every romantic gesture and family bonding moment had been calculated to gain access to assets he could exploit. I shared all this information with the lawyer managing my inheritance. He said he would document Lance's harassment and escalating behavior in my file. He also suggested I consider getting a restraining order if Lance continued trying to contact me. The lawyer told me something interesting about property inheritance cases. He said it was common for manipulative family members or partners to become desperate when their initial pressure tactics failed. He had seen cases where people traveled across the country to harass beneficiaries or even hired private investigators to find them. The lawyer assured me that no amount of pressure or harassment could force me to give up my inheritance. He said my grandmother had specifically structured the will to protect me from exactly this type of situation. The property was legally mine and no one could change that. I am staying vigilant and following my dad's advice about safety precautions. I have blocked Lance's number and all his social media accounts. I carry my phone at all times and have campus security programmed as a speed dial number. My dad says we will reassess the situation in a few weeks to see if Lance gives up and goes back to Ohio. If Lance continues stalking me or shows up in Texas again, we will pursue legal action including restraining orders and harassment charges. The hardest part is knowing that my mom is still supporting Lance despite his increasingly inappropriate behavior. She has chosen a con artist over her own son's safety and well-being. I am starting to accept that my mom might never come to her senses about Lance. Final update: this will be my final update because the situation has reached a conclusion of sorts. Thank you to everyone who has followed my story and offered support. Some of you predicted exactly how things would unfold. Lance did not give up after his trip to Texas. 3 weeks after the school incident, he started creating fake social media accounts to contact me. He would send friend requests using different names and photos, then message me once I accepted. The messages were always the same: apologies, promises to change, and pleas for me to give him another chance. I figured out Lance's pattern quickly and stopped accepting friend requests from people I did not recognize. Lance then started commenting on my public posts using fake accounts. He would leave long comments about family forgiveness and second chances, clearly intended for me to read. My dad helped me make all my social media accounts private and report Lance's fake profiles to the platforms. Most of the accounts got deleted for violating terms of service, but Lance kept creating new ones. It became a constant game of blocking and reporting. Lance also started sending letters to my dad's apartment. The letters were addressed to me and contained the same basic message as his social media attempts. Lance claimed he was reformed and desperately wanted to make amends. He said my mom was suffering because of our estrangement and Jenna needed her big brother to come home. The letters escalated over time. Lance started including photos of Jenna looking sad and handwritten notes supposedly from her begging me to visit. He sent copies of bills showing my mom's financial struggle since I left. Lance claimed my mom was working extra shifts to make ends meet without my help around the house. My dad and I took the letters to the police. The officer said the letters were not technically threatening but could be considered harassment since I had clearly asked Lance to stop contacting me. He said we could file for a restraining order if Lance continued or if the messages became more threatening. 2 weeks ago, everything came to a head. My Aunt Janet called with news that changed everything. She said Lance had been arrested for stealing money from his auto repair shop customers. Apparently, Lance had been taking payment from customers for major repairs, then doing minimal work or using cheap knockoff parts while charging for premium services. Several customers had complained to the Better Business Bureau and eventually filed police reports. The investigation revealed Lance had stolen over $15,000 from customers over the past 6 months. He had been using the money to pay personal expenses and keep his failing business afloat. Some customers had paid for transmission repairs that were never done, while others received used parts but were charged for new ones. The police also discovered Lance had been forging invoices and creating fake receipts to cover his tracks. When customers complained about their cars still having problems after expensive repairs, Lance would claim they needed additional work and charge them more money. Lance was charged with multiple counts of theft and fraud. His bail was set at $25,000, which he could not afford. The auto repair shop was immediately shut down pending the criminal investigation. All of Lance's business assets were frozen by the court. Janet said my mom was devastated when she learned about Lance's arrest. She had no idea Lance was stealing from customers and had believed his claims about business difficulties being due to economic factors beyond his control. My mom finally started to see Lance's true character when the police interviewed her as part of their investigation. They asked about Lance's finances and living situation. My mom learned that Lance had been lying about almost everything regarding his business and personal history. The police showed my mom evidence of Lance's fraudulent activities, including fake invoices and altered bank records. They also informed her about Lance's previous bankruptcies and divorces, which Lance had never mentioned. My mom realized Lance had been deceiving her from the beginning. Janet said my mom broke down completely when she understood how thoroughly Lance had manipulated her. She admitted to Janet that Lance had been pressuring her to take out a loan against the house to help with his business expenses. My mom had been seriously considering it before Lance's arrest. My mom also confessed that Lance had been asking detailed questions about my inheritance from the very beginning of their relationship. She realized Lance had targeted her specifically because he knew about my grandmother's property. Everything Lance had done was calculated to gain access to our family's assets. The revelation about Lance's criminal behavior finally broke my mom's psychological hold over him. She saw that everyone who had tried to warn her about Lance had been right. She had nearly destroyed her relationship with her son to protect a man who was actively stealing from innocent people. My mom called me 2 days after Lance's arrest. She was crying and could barely speak coherently. She apologized repeatedly and said she had been blind to Lance's true nature. She admitted she had chosen Lance over me and had been completely wrong. My mom explained that Lance had been very skilled at manipulation and had gradually isolated her from family members who questioned him. He had convinced her that people were jealous of their relationship and trying to sabotage her happiness. She had believed Lance's lies about his ex-wives and business problems. My mom also revealed that Lance had been financially abusing her during their relationship. He had convinced her to put his name on her bank account and had been using her money for personal expenses. Lance had told her this was normal for engaged couples and showed his commitment to their future together. Lance had also been pressuring my mom to refinance the house and use the money to invest in his business expansion. He claimed this would benefit the whole family by creating more income for our household. My mom now realized Lance was planning to steal her house equity just like he had done to his second ex-wife. My mom begged me to forgive her and asked if I would consider coming home for a visit. She said she understood if I could never trust her again but hoped we could eventually rebuild our relationship. She promised Lance was completely out of our lives and would never have contact with our family again. I told my mom I appreciated her apology but needed time to process everything that had happened. I said I was glad she finally saw Lance's true character but was still hurt by how she had treated me. I agreed to think about visiting but made no promises about timing. My dad encouraged me to maintain contact with my mom while being cautious about getting pulled back into drama. He said my mom had been victimized by Lance too, even though her choices had hurt me. He reminded me that forgiveness was a process and I should take as much time as I needed. I decided to start with phone calls and see how things went. My mom and I have been talking once a week for the past month. She gives me updates about Lance's legal case and her efforts to rebuild her finances. She also talks about Jenna and how she is adjusting to Lance's absence. Jenna is doing better now that Lance is gone. My mom said Jenna had been afraid of Lance toward the end because he would yell at her for normal kid behavior. Lance had been getting increasingly irritable and taking his stress out on everyone in the house. My mom enrolled Jenna in counseling to help her process the confusing situation with Lance. The counselor said Jenna was showing signs of relief that Lance was no longer around. Jenna had been walking on eggshells trying not to upset Lance and can now just be a normal 6-year-old again. Lance's criminal trial is scheduled for next month. The prosecutor expects him to plead guilty in exchange for a reduced sentence. Lance will likely serve 2 to 3 years in prison and will have to pay restitution to his victims. His auto repair shop will be sold to help cover the money he stole. My mom's financial situation is stable now that Lance is not draining her resources. She discovered Lance had taken nearly $3,000 from her account over the past few months for personal expenses he had hidden from her. The bank is helping her pursue recovery of those funds as part of Lance's restitution. My mom also found out Lance had been intercepting some of her mail, including bank statements and credit card offers. He had been monitoring her finances much more closely than she realized. Lance had even applied for a credit card in her name without her knowledge, though the application was denied. The experience with Lance taught my mom important lessons about financial boundaries and protecting herself from manipulation. She closed the joint bank account and changed all her passwords. She also asked her sisters to help her watch for warning signs if she ever dates again in the future. I am finishing my senior year in Texas and will graduate on schedule. I have been accepted to several colleges and am planning to use income from the duplex to pay for my education. The property continues to perform well under the lawyer's management and will provide me with financial security throughout college. My relationship with my mom is slowly improving but will take time to fully heal. I plan to visit Ohio this summer to see Jenna and spend time with my extended family. I may consider moving back to Ohio for college if my mom and I can rebuild enough trust. My dad has been incredible throughout this whole experience. He took me in without hesitation and supported me through Lance's harassment campaign. He helped me see that I made the right choice by protecting my inheritance and standing up for myself. The duplex my grandmother left me represents more than just money. It represents her belief in my future and her desire to help me succeed. Lance tried to steal that gift and use it for his own selfish purposes. I am grateful I had the strength to resist his manipulation and preserve my grandmother's legacy. This experience taught me that family relationships are complicated and sometimes people we love make terrible choices. My mom chose Lance over me, but she was also a victim of his manipulation. Lance was skilled at finding vulnerable people and exploiting their emotions for financial gain. I learned to trust my instincts when something feels wrong, even if other people try to convince me otherwise. Lance's behavior toward me was inappropriate from the beginning, and I was right to resist his attempts to control my inheritance. Standing up for myself was difficult but ultimately necessary. To anyone dealing with similar family manipulation, I want to say that you have the right to protect yourself and your assets. Do not let anyone pressure you into giving up something that belongs to you, especially if they use emotional manipulation or threats. Trust your instincts and seek support from people who have your best interests at heart. My mom and I may never have the same relationship we had before Lance, but we are working towards something healthier. Jenna will grow up knowing she has a big brother who loves her and will always be there for her. My dad and I have grown closer through this experience and I am grateful for his wisdom and support. Lance is facing the consequences of his criminal behavior and will not be able to hurt other families for several years. My mom is stronger and wiser now and less likely to fall for future manipulation. Jenna is safe and can focus on being a kid without walking on eggshells around an unstable adult. I kept my inheritance intact and will use it to build a successful future for myself. My grandmother would be proud that I stood up for myself and protected the gift she wanted me to have. Lance failed in his attempt to steal from our family and is now facing justice for his crimes against multiple victims. This whole experience was painful but taught me valuable lessons about family, trust, and standing up for what is right. I am looking forward to college and building an adult life based on the strong foundation my grandmother provided through her generous gift. Now let's move to the next story. Story 2. My sister married my abusive ex-boyfriend and I had to move to a new city because they wouldn't stop harassing me. I, 26F, never thought I'd be in this situation. My older sister Natalie, 28F, recently married my ex-boyfriend Ryan, 31M, who I dated for 2 years in college. Our relationship was toxic and abusive, but I didn't realize how bad it was until after we broke up. Growing up, Natalie and I were inseparable despite our 2-year age gap. We shared a room, clothes, and secrets. Our parents, both busy lawyers, often worked long hours, so we relied on each other for companionship. We'd spend hours playing make-believe in our backyard, creating elaborate fantasy worlds where we were princesses or spies. As we got older, our bond remained strong. We'd stay up late talking about boys, our dreams for the future, and our fears. Natalie was always the more outgoing one, while I was shyer and more reserved. She'd encourage me to come out of my shell and would always stick up for me if anyone tried to bully me at school. When Natalie left for college, it was hard being apart for the first time. We'd call each other every day and I'd visit her on weekends whenever I could. She'd tell me all about college life and I couldn't wait to join her. When it was finally my turn to go to college 2 years later, I was thrilled to be reunited with my sister. We'd always talked about going to the same school and now our dream was coming true. It was during my freshman year that I met Ryan. He was a junior and seemed so mature and worldly to my 18-year-old self. We met at a party Natalie had brought me to. She was friends with Ryan's roommate and introduced us. Ryan was charming and attentive, making me feel special in a way no guy ever had before. He asked for my number that night and we started texting constantly. Our first date was magical. Ryan took me to a fancy restaurant off campus, somewhere I'd never have been able to afford on my own. He ordered wine for us both, even though I was underage, making me feel sophisticated and grown up. We talked for hours about our families, our dreams, our favorite books and movies. It felt like we had everything in common. Things moved quickly after that. Within a few weeks, we were officially a couple. I was head over heels in love for the first time. Ryan would surprise me with flowers and little gifts. He'd leave sweet notes in my textbooks for me to find during class. He always wanted to spend time with me, which I found flattering. Looking back, I can see the red flags that were there from the beginning. Ryan would get jealous if I talked to other guys, even just classmates working on group projects. He'd question me about my male friends and suggest I shouldn't hang out with them anymore. He'd make comments about my clothes, saying certain outfits were too revealing and I should change. But at the time, I thought he was just being protective and that it meant he really cared about me. As the months went by, Ryan's controlling behavior escalated. He'd get angry if I didn't answer his calls or texts right away. He started showing up unannounced at my dorm room or the library where I was studying. He'd accuse me of cheating if I was even a few minutes late meeting him somewhere. I started walking on eggshells around him, afraid of setting off his temper. I confided in Natalie about some of Ryan's behavior, but I downplayed how bad it was. I was embarrassed to admit I was in such a toxic relationship. Natalie expressed some concern, but I assured her everything was fine. I didn't want her to think I couldn't handle my first serious relationship. The physical abuse started about a year into our relationship. The first time it happened, we were arguing about me going to a party without him. He grabbed my arm so hard it left bruises. He was immediately apologetic, crying and begging for forgiveness. He swore it would never happen again. I believed him and didn't tell anyone what had happened. But it did happen again. And again. The abuse got worse over time. He'd slap me, push me, throw things at me. Once he punched me in the stomach so hard I couldn't breathe. Another time he choked me until I almost passed out. After each incident, he'd be remorseful and shower me with affection, promising to change. I kept hoping things would get better, that the sweet guy I'd fallen for would come back. I became isolated from my friends and family. I stopped hanging out with anyone but Ryan. My grades started slipping because I was so stressed all the time. I lost weight because I was too anxious to eat. Natalie noticed the changes in me and tried to talk to me about it, but I pushed her away. I was ashamed and afraid to admit what was really going on. The final straw came just after my 21st birthday. Ryan and I had a huge fight because I'd gone out for drinks with some girlfriends to celebrate. He was furious that I'd gone without him. When I got home, he was waiting in my apartment. He had a key by then. He flew into a rage, hitting me repeatedly and threatening to kill me if I ever tried to leave him. I genuinely feared for my life that night. The next day, while Ryan was at work, I packed up as much as I could and fled to Natalie's apartment. When she saw my bruised face, she broke down crying. I finally told her everything. She wanted to go to the police but I was too scared. Instead, she helped me block Ryan's number and social media accounts. She let me stay with her until I found a new apartment where Ryan wouldn't know the address. The months after the breakup were incredibly difficult. I had nightmares and panic attacks. I was jumpy and afraid to go out alone. I finally agreed to see a therapist, which helped me start to process the trauma of the abuse. Slowly, I began to heal and rebuild my life. Natalie was my rock during this time. She'd stay up with me when I couldn't sleep, hold me when I cried, and reassure me that I was strong and would get through this. She went with me to therapy appointments and helped me catch up on the schoolwork I'd fallen behind on. Her support was invaluable in my recovery. Over the next few years, I focused on myself. I threw myself into my studies and graduated with honors. I got a good job at a marketing firm in our hometown. I made new friends and even started cautiously dating again. I felt like I was finally in a good place. Then, about 6 months ago, Natalie dropped a bombshell on me. She and Ryan had reconnected and started dating. I was blindsided. How could my own sister, who had seen firsthand what Ryan had done to me, be with him? I felt betrayed and sick to my stomach. Natalie claimed Ryan had changed. She said he'd been to anger management classes and therapy. She insisted he was a different person now. But I couldn't believe it. The Ryan I knew was a master manipulator. I was sure he was just putting on an act to fool Natalie. I begged Natalie to reconsider, reminding her of everything Ryan had done to me. But she dismissed my concerns, saying it was all in the past and I needed to move on. She accused me of being jealous and trying to ruin her happiness. Our relationship, once so close, became strained and distant. My parents were conflicted about the situation. They didn't approve of Natalie dating Ryan, knowing what he'd done to me, but they also didn't want to alienate their older daughter. They tried to stay neutral at first, which just made me feel unsupported and alone. Things escalated quickly. Within a few months, Natalie and Ryan were engaged. They planned a whirlwind wedding, seeming eager to make things official before anyone could talk them out of it. I told my family I wouldn't attend the wedding. I couldn't bear to watch my sister marry my abuser. Natalie was furious, accusing me of trying to ruin her special day. My parents finally took a stand and said they wouldn't go either if I wasn't welcome. The wedding was last month. Since then, Natalie, Ryan, and Ryan's family have been harassing me nonstop. They've been spreading vicious lies about me to our extended family and mutual friends. They're claiming I'm mentally unstable and that I made up the abuse allegations out of jealousy. Ryan's mother even called my workplace, trying to get me fired by claiming I was an unstable drug addict, which is completely false. I've blocked them on every platform I can think of, but they keep creating new accounts to contact me. They show up at my apartment unannounced, pounding on the door and yelling. Ryan has threatened to expose me by releasing private photos or videos from when we dated. I'm not sure if he actually has anything or if he's bluffing, but the threat alone is terrifying. I'm at my wits' end dealing with their harassment. I'm considering getting a restraining order, but I'm not sure if that will make things better or worse. I just want them out of my life for good. The stress is affecting my work and my health. I've started having panic attacks again, something I haven't experienced in years. I feel like I'm living a nightmare. The person who was once my best friend in the world is now married to the man who abused me, and they're both seemingly intent on destroying my life. I don't know how to make it stop. Update 1. It's been about a month since my last post, and unfortunately things have only escalated with Natalie and Ryan's harassment. After careful consideration and discussion with my therapist, I decided to file for a temporary restraining order against both Natalie and Ryan 2 weeks ago. I had compiled extensive documentation of their harassment, screenshots of their constant messages and emails, security camera footage of them showing up uninvited at my home and workplace, and recordings of threatening voicemails. The judge reviewed the evidence and granted the temporary order. We have a hearing scheduled next month to determine if it will be made permanent. Natalie's reaction to being served with the restraining order was explosive. She showed up at our parents' house in a rage, screaming and crying about how I was tearing the family apart. She accused me of being vindictive and trying to punish her for being happy. Our parents, who have become much more supportive of me in recent weeks, stood firm. They told Natalie that she had brought this on herself by choosing Ryan over her own sister. Ryan's response was even more disturbing. He started leaving threatening voicemails for me at work, blatantly violating the restraining order. In one particularly chilling message, he said he was going to make me pay for trying to keep him away from his wife. He said I would regret crossing him and that he knew people who could take care of me if he wanted. I immediately reported these messages to the police. The day after I reported the voicemails, I woke up to find my car had been vandalized overnight. All 4 tires were slashed and the word liar was keyed into the driver's side door. While I can't prove it was Ryan, the timing seems far too coincidental. I filed another police report and had to get my car towed to a repair shop. My workplace has been incredibly supportive through all of this. After Ryan's mother tried to get me fired with her false accusations, my boss sat down with me to discuss the situation. I was honest about everything that had happened, showing him the restraining order and police reports. He assured me that my job was secure and that the company would support me however they could. They've since implemented tighter security measures. No non-employees are allowed into the building without an escort. My desk has been moved to a more secure area away from windows and doors. They've allowed me to work from home as much as possible to minimize the risk of Ryan or Natalie showing up at the office. The stress of the situation has been taking a toll on my mental health. I've started seeing my therapist twice a week to help cope with the anxiety and renewed PTSD symptoms. Having to relive the trauma of my abusive relationship with Ryan in order to document everything for the restraining order has brought up a lot of painful memories I thought I dealt with. I've been having nightmares again, waking up in a cold sweat thinking Ryan is in my room. I'm jumpy and paranoid, constantly looking over my shoulder when I'm out in public. I've lost weight because my appetite is gone and I can barely sleep. It feels like I'm right back where I was when I first left Ryan, undoing years of healing and progress. The one bright spot in all of this has been the unwavering support of my parents and friends. After initially trying to stay neutral, my parents have now fully taken my side. They've made it clear to Natalie that they don't approve of her choices and won't have a relationship with her as long as she's with Ryan. My mom has been staying with me most nights so I'm not alone. Having her there has been a huge comfort. My friends have rallied around me as well. They take turns driving me to work since I'm without a car at the moment. They come over to keep me company in the evenings and make sure I'm eating. They've been helping me document every incident of harassment to build an even stronger case for the permanent restraining order. I'm trying to stay hopeful that the hearing next month will result in a long-term order that will finally put an end to Natalie and Ryan's campaign of terror. But I'm also realistic about the fact that they may continue to escalate. Ryan has shown he has no respect for the law or for my boundaries. I'm taking every precaution I can to stay safe, but I'm constantly on edge waiting for their next move. Part of me still can't believe this is my reality. That my own sister, who I was once so close to, could betray me like this. That she could watch me suffer through years of abuse and then turn around and marry my abuser. There are moments when I'm overwhelmed by grief for the relationship we once had and the sister I've lost. But then I remind myself that the Natalie I knew and loved is gone. The person she's become, someone who would deliberately inflict pain on her own sister, is a stranger to me. As much as it hurts, I know I'm better off without her in my life. I have to focus on protecting myself now. I'm trying to take things one day at a time and not let fear consume me. I'm throwing myself into my work when I can focus, trying to maintain some sense of normalcy. I'm leaning on my support system and trying to practice the coping skills I've learned in therapy. It's a daily struggle, but I'm determined not to let Ryan and Natalie destroy everything I've worked so hard to build. Update 2. It's been about 2 months since my last update. The hearing for the permanent restraining order was last week. I'm relieved to say it was granted against both Natalie and Ryan for 1 year. In the weeks leading up to the hearing, Natalie and Ryan's harassment campaign kicked into high gear. They seemed determined to discredit me and paint themselves as the victims before we got to court. They created a website filled with lies about me, claiming I was actually the abusive one in the relationship with Ryan. They said I was emotionally unstable and had a history of making false accusations against men. They even dug up and twisted stories from our childhood, claiming I'd always been jealous of Natalie and was now trying to destroy her marriage out of spite. They sent the link to this website to our entire extended family, all our mutual friends from college, and even my co-workers. While most people saw through their lies, it was still humiliating to have my personal business spread around like that. Some distant relatives and old acquaintances who didn't know the full story started reaching out, asking if I was okay or expressing concern about my mental health. It was exhausting having to constantly defend myself and rehash the painful details of my past. The day before the hearing, I received an anonymous email with several old intimate photos of me attached. The message threatened to release them publicly if I went through with the restraining order. I was shaken but decided not to let their blackmail attempt stop me from protecting myself. I forwarded the email to my lawyer to add to our evidence for the hearing. At the courthouse, I was a nervous wreck. Seeing Ryan again in person for the first time in years made me feel physically ill. He and Natalie tried to approach me in the hallway before the hearing began, but thankfully my lawyer intercepted them. Once we were before the judge, I presented all the evidence of their harassment, the threatening messages, the keyed car, the defamatory website, and the blackmail attempt with the photos. My therapist testified about the PTSD symptoms I've been experiencing as a result of their actions. My boss spoke about the disruption to my work and the security measures they've had to implement. Ryan tried to claim it was all a misunderstanding and that he just wanted to clear the air with me. He said he and Natalie were worried about me and just wanted to make amends. He painted himself as a changed man who had worked hard to overcome his past mistakes. Natalie backed him up, saying I was blowing everything out of proportion because I couldn't accept their relationship. Thankfully, the judge saw right through their act. She noted that their actions went far beyond any attempts at reconciliation and constituted a clear pattern of harassment and intimidation. She granted the restraining order and sternly warned Ryan and Natalie that any further contact or retaliation would result in criminal charges. I felt a huge wave of relief leaving the courthouse. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe easier knowing I had legal protection from their abuse. But I also knew this was likely just the beginning of a long road ahead. Unfortunately, my relationship with Natalie seems permanently destroyed. As we left the courthouse, she screamed at me in the parking lot that I was dead to her and she never wanted to see me again. As painful as it is, I think a permanent estrangement may be for the best. I don't recognize the person my sister has become. My parents are devastated at the situation but continue to support me fully. They've made it clear to Natalie that they won't have a relationship with her as long as she's with Ryan. It's tearing them apart to be estranged from their older daughter, but they understand the need to protect me. I'm focusing now on healing and moving forward with my life. I'm looking into moving to a new apartment where Natalie and Ryan don't know the address. I'm also considering accepting a job transfer to a different city to get a fresh start somewhere they can't find me easily. It's been a hellish few months but I finally feel like I'm coming out the other side stronger. I'm proud of myself for standing up to my abuser and not letting him or my sister bully me into silence. I know the road ahead won't be easy, but I'm determined to reclaim my life and find happiness again. Update 3. It's been about 6 weeks since the restraining order was granted and things have finally started to calm down. Natalie and Ryan seem to have given up on harassing me, at least for now. I haven't heard from either of them since the day of the hearing. After a lot of consideration, I decided to accept the job transfer I was offered. I moved to a new city about 3 hours away last week. It was bittersweet leaving my hometown, but I already feel so much safer and more at peace here. I'm in an apartment building with good security and I've been careful not to post anything about my new location on social media. The company I work for has been incredibly supportive through this whole ordeal. They're letting me work remotely most of the time and have implemented extra security measures for when I do go into the office. My new team has been welcoming and it feels good to throw myself into work without constantly looking over my shoulder. I'm slowly settling into my new apartment and trying to make it feel like home. I've joined a support group for domestic violence survivors which has been really healing. It helps to talk to others who understand what I've been through. I'm making an effort to get out and explore my new city, trying to push past the anxiety and reclaim my independence. My parents came to visit last weekend to help me unpack. It was emotional saying goodbye to them, knowing I won't see them as often now. But they agree this move is what's best for my safety and mental health. They've promised to visit often and we've set up weekly video chats to stay connected. They updated me on the situation with Natalie. Apparently she showed up at their house a couple weeks ago in tears, saying Ryan had hit her during an argument. They tried to convince her to leave him, but she made excuses for his behavior and went back to him the next day. It breaks my heart to know she's now trapped in the same abusive cycle I was. I hope someday she finds the strength to leave him. But I know I can't be the one to help her, I need to protect myself first. I'm cautiously optimistic about this new chapter in my life. For the first time in months, I'm excited about the future instead of living in constant anxiety and fear. I know there may still be tough times ahead, but I feel stronger and more capable of handling whatever comes my way. I'm working on rebuilding my support network here. I've reconnected with an old college friend who lives nearby and she's been showing me around the city. I'm looking into joining some hobby groups to meet new people. My therapist helped me find a new counselor here to continue my treatment. There are still moments when I'm overwhelmed by everything that's happened. I have days where I miss my old life and the close relationship I used to have with Natalie. But then I remind myself of how far I've come and how much healthier and happier I am now. I'm focusing on self-care and rediscovering the things that bring me joy. I've started painting again, something I loved in college but gave up during my relationship with Ryan. I'm taking a yoga class and learning to cook new recipes. Small steps, but they help me feel like I'm reclaiming pieces of myself. I know this journey isn't over. I'll likely be dealing with the aftermath of the abuse and the fallout with my sister for years to come. But for the first time in a long time, I feel hopeful about the future. I'm proud of myself for being strong enough to leave, to stand up for myself, and to start over. Thank you to everyone who has supported me through this nightmare. Your kindness and encouragement helped me find the strength to stand up for myself and reclaim my life. I'm eternally grateful and I hope my story can help others who might be in similar situations. If you're in an abusive relationship, please know that you're not alone and that there is hope for a better future.